Hayo und willkommen. That there was an introduction in Ushklisk, a constructed language or conlang that I invented. You mean you invented a new language? Yes. What, so now even more people can't understand what you're saying? Yes. Hello again and welcome. Today I'm here to help you get started inventing your own language. This is useful for a variety of reasons, from learning to better understand how we use language every day, which can help you better learn and understand languages in the real world, to creating something that will sound and feel more realistic when creating science fiction and fantasy settings. You can even use a conlang for creating a way that you can talk in secret and in public at the same time with all of your friends. Plus, it's just good fun. We need to start by deciding on the range of sounds that your language will have. This means selecting the range of vowels, consonants and inflections that are possible in your language. If we look at English, it has far more possible sounds than our alphabet accounts for, which is one of the primary reasons why English is so ridiculously difficult to learn. Your language can choose to use these sounds if you want, or you could decide to simplify the range of sounds. There are also other sounds that English does not use, like clicks and whistles, or even more commonplace sounds from other European languages like German. German introduces a number of rhotics, which are R-like sounds that do not occur in British English, but do appear in American accented English. Similarly, British English uses laterals, which are L-like sounds created by blocking the airflow through the mouth using the tongue, something German does not generally do. Okay, so let's say that you've decided on the range of sounds that you're going to use in your language. Now what? Well, before you can go any further with your language, you're going to have to start making notes on it so that you can properly work things out. This means you need to know how to write your language. The easiest way to do this is to use your native alphabet because you'll be intimately familiar with it. The vast majority of conlangs are or can be written about in the standard Latin alphabet, which is really useful because then you can talk about it with people on the internet without having to get them to install customized fonts. But the downside of this is that it can look quite boring, especially if you're used to seeing Latin alphabets all the time. So what can you do? Simple. Invent your own writing system. This isn't as hard as you might think. There are many different writing systems in the world, and throughout history humanity has used a variety of different ways of writing things down. The ones we are most familiar with are the alphabets of Western Europe, which are predominantly based on the Latin alphabet, but not always. I'm looking at you here, Greece. Alphabets represent individual sounds, and their letters are combined to create words. But this isn't the only way to write. This is katakana, one of the Japanese kana writing systems. Kana are syllabaries, which means that each individual symbol represents a sound group, such as bo, sho, e, and so forth. As with alphabets, these syllables are combined into words, such as the word katakana itself. Then, there are logographic writing systems such as hieroglyphs. When we think of logograms, we usually imagine ancient writing systems such as the Egyptian hieroglyphic system. But in truth, we still use logograms every day. Emoji are a form of logogram, as are street signs and smileys. Even the gender symbols on public toilets and the icons on your computer are logograms. This is by no means a sum total of writing systems that have ever been used or ever could be used, but it does give you a good idea of what range of options you have available to you. Which writing system you want for your language will really just depend on what the look and feel of the language is that you are going for. If you want something quick and simple that can be easily transferred to direct typing on your computer, a Latin alphabet-based writing system is the way to go. If you want something that looks different and a little more unique, feel free to go wild inventing your own symbols, regardless of whether they are for an alphabet, a syllabary, or any other system. Okay, so you know what your language is going to sound like and how to write it, but what exactly are you going to write? It's time to create some words. Now there are a few ways that you can go about this. If you're making up your language from whole cloth, then feel free to put together words based on the groups of sounds that you decided on earlier. This is a perfectly legitimate way of putting together your new constructed language, and it's exactly what I did with Aggro, which is why Aggro sounds like no language I have ever come across. You can both end up with something that sounds really alien this way, and also something that sounds perfectly natural, and something that human beings might actually invent. Which of those you get depends entirely on how much thought you put into the structure of your language, and the way that the words are actually formed. Let's look at an example from Aggro, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The key to creating a natural feel to a language is to make sure that words that have a similar meaning or a similar origin sound like they are related. For example, if we look at the Japanese word for food, tabemono, then we look at the Japanese word to eat, taberu, then we know that they are related to the same thing because they have the same root, tabe. So if you want to make your language sound natural, remember to link words like that. Not all words, you don't have to go overboard, but enough that people will look at it and think, ah, those are related. This has the advantage of both making it feel more natural for your language and also reducing the amount of words that you have to actually think about the whole cloth, because you can just go, right, I've got this one and I've got this one, they're going to be related, so we're going to take this bit from that one and add it to this bit from here and link them together, and now we have a new word. Much, much simpler than having to make everything up as you go along. The alternative method when creating your lexicon, which is the range of words that are available in your language, is to base your language on existing languages. I did this when I was creating Ushglisk, which is a future language from a sci-fi setting. Ushglisk is based on English, German, Scandinavian languages, and a smattering of French for just a bit of flavour. As a result, the majority of its words are a corruption or intermingling of existing Western words, which is why my introduction, Hayo und Willkommen, was probably comprehensible to you even though you don't actually speak Ushglisk. Not all the Ushglisk words are taken directly from modern languages, however. I've changed a few to better fit the feel of the language that I was aiming for, and still others I've invented out of whole cloth to represent the random mutation factor that languages have over time. If you aren't sure where to start when creating the words for your language, then a good place to begin is with commonly used verbs such as to be, to eat, to see, as well as numbers, colours and common nouns. Don't feel like you have to sit down and invent every single word that you're going to need right at the start, because you can always create new words as and when you need them. But if you do want to start and have a crack at a load of words right away, then a good place to begin is with the Swadesh list. This is a set of words that American linguist Morris Swadesh compiled to compare the relationships between various languages. Conlangers, that is, people who create constructed languages, now use it as a way of kickstarting their own lexicons. You can find the Swadesh list on Wikipedia, and I highly recommend making up all of the words that are on that list because it will give you a brilliant kickstart to your lexicon. Okay, so now you know how your language sounds, you know how to write it down, you even know what the words are that you can write down. But what order do those words come in? Well, that comes down to your grammar. That's the order of the words and how they change in relation to who we're speaking to, what we're talking about, whether it's past, present, and future, and so forth. Grammar is how I can tell you that kalabapa means you have eaten, a clear statement in Aggro, while wa kalabapa lu means have you eaten and is a question, also in Aggro. There's a tendency amongst beginning conlangers to replicate the grammar of their native language. So for those of you who speak English, you're essentially creating an unstructured language because you're basing it on English. If you do that, what you're actually ending up with is less of a language and more of a really complicated cipher, which isn't really what we're going for here. You can avoid this by having a look at how other languages arrange their sentences, determine their tenses, which is indications of past, present and future, indicate the subject of a sentence, and so forth. Pick out what you think works well from each of these languages and discard the rest. Then you can assemble all of the things that you've taken from those languages into your own grammar. For example, with Ushglisk, I decided that there would be no separate word for the definite article, which is the. I instead used the Scandinavian method of appending a suffix to each noun. So for example, if I wanted to talk about the book in Ushglisk, I would say boken. I then expanded this by deciding that indefinite articles such as a book in Ushglisk would be determined by a prefix. So for Ushglisk, saying a book would be an book. That's not a Scandinavian thing, but it did fit with the feel of the language that I was trying to create. So don't think that you have to just rigidly stick to whatever you've chosen. You can in fact modify any part of your language to fit exactly what you're going for. Just remember, don't make it so ridiculously complex that no human being could possibly learn it in their entire lifetime, unless of course that's exactly what you're going for. Similarly, the word order in Ushglisk is a combination of different word orders from various European languages. So we ended up with a subject, object, verb word order for the language. What this means is that where in English we would say the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, in Ushglisk we would say the fox, who was brown, over the dog, who was lazy, jumped. It sounds like this. Revetten, bro, ras, over, honten, latso, hoplot. That's fairly straightforward, but what if you want to do something a bit different with your grammar? Well, you can do that too. Let's look at Aggro for something a bit weirder. When I created Aggro, I did it as a challenge to create a language in 30 days, but I didn't want to make it something that, like a lot of conlangs, is basically similar to Western European languages. So I decided that for this language, verbs are not separate words. Instead, they modify nouns in a way similar to how English modifies adjectives into adverbs, giving us words like quickly from quick and things like that. Nouns in Aggro therefore obtain suffixes, lots of suffixes, and some prefixes. I also decided that time could be indicated by doubling prefixes. So, to use the quick brown fox example again, we can say that the fox jumped over the dog in the recent past by saying paluki, or in the distant past by saying paluki. The full sentence therefore becomes, quick brown fox, the male, past perfect tense jump, over, lazy dog, the female. Hola suti bofi hala paluki, nobe guwa mutakali. And yes, that is a mouthful. Okay, that's all we've got time for this week. It's not a complete guide to creating your own languages because unfortunately there are huge amounts of things that you could add in, and basically this video would have turned into an entire course on linguistics. But don't worry, what you've got here is a good basic guide. If you want to look into conlanging more, then I highly recommend you take a look at the Language Construction Kit website. This contains a brilliant guide to creating your own languages, as well as links to other sites and resources. But that really is all we've got time for this week, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this, and if you did, remember to click a like button, share it with your friends so that they can see how to create a language as well, and do subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But don't worry, those videos won't be in obscure languages. Well, not all of them, perhaps. I can't guarantee it, but sometimes they might come up. Anyway, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching The Knob Mouse Show, and jeg vil se begin.